Hey guys, welcome back to Team Death Slinger. My name is Peter, and today I want to talk about the 10 best finishers in the Digimon TCG. If you're looking for a way to close out games, you're looking for that little extra push to get you over the finish line when the opponent is at 1 or 2 security, these are going to be the cards that do the job for you. They should slot in lots of decks, and we are looking at these somewhat generically, just their ability to slot into any deck of their given color and perform their role. I feel like personally this list was really hard to make. I feel like you could argue the positions of cards up or down 1 or 2 positions. Some of them I could see going in either half of the list. So let me know in the comments down below what your number one finisher in this card game is and why you think it's that way. So we're going to start with some honorable mentions because I think it is important to bring them up and they are relevant. They're just not quite strong enough, I feel like, to be on this list in the top 10. So first, Chimeramon. A lot of these honorable mentions are going to be kind of old guardy. DNAing any 2 level 4s into a Chimera for game is something that I think a lot of us have done. It's still relevant and is still something that's doable. Unfortunately, it is a white card. It is not easily searchable. A lot of our memory boosts and our trainings will just whiff over it. You can grab it with Ukomon, but most of the time you're not going to be running that in a deck that's going to be popping out level 4s for you to DNA with. And now with so many Blastaces, it is just kind of hard to feel safe going for the Chimeramon for game. We have the EX4 Guilmon. I'm going to asterisk this with the BT13 Gallantmon as well. Just anything that you're really plopping down to rush in for a check to win the game doesn't work so well anymore unless the opponent's board is clear. This and the Gallantmon both have some stipulations that make them kind of hard to play. You need lots of trash. The decks that like these cards really like these cards, but again, it is more of a nice thing to have than something that will consistently finish the game for you. And then lastly, I do want to bring up hybrids. The old hybrid for game, not so powerful anymore, especially these 2-cost old hybrids that don't do too much. And the new hybrids go for 3 on generic tamers, so they're not quite as splashable in other decks. So with that out of the way, number 10 on my list is ancientgarurumon from BT17. And I'm not going to read the card effect. I feel like you could do that yourself. But on the left here, I have my reasoning for each card and where it is. So this is a 4-cost Evo. I feel like that is relatively solid, but you likely will need a scramble to Evo for 3 and end the game with it, or you need a training, you need a mem boost. If you just have a memory tamer, you are not going to have enough memory to just Evo Ancient Gar, use the effect, bounce the security to their hand, and then swing for game. You just need a little more help than that. This does also bounce the lowest level Digimon, which does not guarantee a safe swing for game. If the opponent has a level 3 and a level 5 on board, you're bouncing the level 3. If you go to swing in for game when they have no security left, they can still blast ace on the level 5, and that makes this a bit tricky. Adding to security to hand is greater than unsuspend effects. I prioritize that pretty heavily on this list, unless there's a lot of removal that a card had. Just generally, I feel like adding a security to hand, trashing a security, any of those effects are just more powerful than unsuspending. It's going to guarantee you that your stack does not die and does not trigger any security effects. The on deletion on this card is also just generically powerful. It can play you any tamer after you resolve the adding a tamer to your hand part of the effect, which isn't bad. That is a part of the card. It is part of the function. It does not contribute to this card as a finisher, but it is relevant to the power of the card as a whole. And then the Lobo engine that you would run with this card is also relatively small. I think there is an argument for running this card with that engine most of the time. I feel like it's totally splashable in blue decks, yellow decks. If you wanted to do it, you could. That is an option. Number 9, I have quartzmon. Might be a controversial pick for some of our people here, but this does evo on 3 different colors. I think that is a strength of this card. It can go on green, it goes on black, it goes on white, and any level 5 card with the save text for 9, which is really expensive. And this does lock down the board. It suspends things. They can't unsuspend. That in itself is a really strong effect as long as this is on the board. It will also gain you memory back on Digivolve, so we do mitigate that 6-cost Evo. The downside of that is this can still be an expensive Evo. If the board is not set up for you to plop a quartzmon down, it is kind of hard to justify Evoing into quartzmon to try and win the game when there are other options available. And it's kind of going to fall off more in a meta where wide boards are not quite as popular. And if you play a wide board deck, if you don't pop off this deck, this card is not going to be come from behind and win the game kind of card. It's going to be you already set up, you were already wide, and now you've closed out the game while you were ahead. This does trash the security for every 5 suspended Digimon or Tamers, which is really strong, but it can be difficult to trash more than one card. Again, 5 suspended Digimon and Tamers, you are more than likely trashing one security with this card unless your game plan has gone off without a hitch or the opponent has a lot of cards on board. Then you might get 2 trashes. And this does require whiteboard strategies to be really effective as a finisher. That's kind of my hang up with this card. That's why it is number 9 and not higher for me, is it just the amount of circumstance that needs to surround this card for it to be an effective finisher, in my opinion. Number 8, I have Omnimon X-antibody from BT10. This is a 5-cost Evo with X-antibody in the stack. You don't necessarily have to have Omnimon to use this card, and there will be a lot of X-antibodies on this list, and most of them are being placed with the assumption that we are putting an X-antibody in the stack to get the full effect. This does remove multiple threats at highest level, which is great because that means we can remove multiple level 6s, multiple level 5s, whatever the opponent is rocking lots of, we can remove, but that also does not necessarily remove the blast phase threat. If the opponent has 2 level 6s, a level 5, or a level 7, a level 6, level 5, any combination of levels other than a single level means the opponent still has the opportunity to blast phase into a 6 or into a 7. You do get to choose the card that you trash from security, which is really nice, which means this card is not just effective as a finisher, but it's also effective at reducing the risk to you as you swing into security earlier in the game. And generically, this is just good for red and blue decks. The downside of that is that it's not really searchable via trainings or memory boosts. You're going to have to find this with Analog Youth or Ukomon, but just in its own right, I think it's a really strong card that red and blue can use to close out games if they need the extra finisher. For number 7, I placed Beelzemon Blast Mode Ace from BT19. This is a new card that we have for purple specifically to use as a finisher. This is a 5-cost Evo on a level 6, which does hurt. It offers level-based deletion. You need 10-card threshold in trash to hit level 7s. Otherwise, you're just hitting level 6 or lowers. That is mostly fine. Allows you to put 10 cards back on top of the deck. That is actually not, I don't think, to be understated as an effect, because in purple decks, you cycle through a lot of cards. It's not bad to be able to put things back on top of your deck. You get to fix the top 10 cards of your deck. If you think about it that way, that's kind of a plus. The downside to that is 10 cards are required in trash to threaten lethal from one security. You're not trashing a security if you don't have 10 non-Digi cards in trash, which can be a hang-up for this card. Like we said earlier, 10 cards in trash, not necessarily a downside. It's not really difficult in any purple deck. You're either drawing cards, trashing cards. You're putting cards in trash with mill effects. There's just plenty of ways to do that in purple, and I don't think it's really a point of consideration for this card being good or not. It's just if you're going to have that effect active or not when you play the card. And again, 5-cost Evo, a bit expensive for Evo into swing to end the game. You're going to need your memory setter and then some help, basically, to set it up. Or the opponent has to swing into you, you have to blast ace, and then they have to have not have a way to remove this card. So you need to blast ace and have it stick. And a lot of the time recently, that feels harder to do as we have more and more removal effects just inherent to digivolving up the stack. Number 6, Agunimon, Bond of Bravery. This is a 3-cost Evo, which I think is immediately just makes this card really, really good. And you can conditionally Evo on an Agumon for 3 as well. If you have 2 or fewer security cards, you just warp into this on top of an Agumon. That's really good. In red decks, it would not be difficult to splash an Agumon into your rookie lineup for a DP boosting inheritable that just threatens the warp play with Agumon. That's just not weird to me. This deletes any number of Digimon, which effectively handles a wide board or large single targets. This is basically a Crimson mode who cares about its own DP instead of the hard 15k limit, which I think is really good. But that does mean that this requires DP boost to be especially effective. You're not going to be technically more effective than a Crimson mode unless you have DP boosting inherits. But like we talked about with Agumon, you probably have them in red. This also trashes security as long as the tamer is in play. You're threatening lethal from one security. I think that's perfectly reasonable. Having a tamer in play is not hard at all. You're probably doing it in most decks. So this is just a great way to finish the game from one security. Number 5, I'm going with the new Omnimon X-antibody from BT20. This card is a handful. It is a lot. So it has Raid Piercing Blocker. That is, in my opinion, just a really, really awesome trifecta of keywords. Blocker, you can keep yourself safe if you're on the verge of losing. Raid Piercing means if you get into this and keep turn, you're going to be removing threats off the board. This is also just straight up a board wipe. It bottom decks whatever Digimon are not deleted, so both players are going to choose one Digimon, everything else gets deleted. Then you're going to get to bottom deck one of your opponent's Digimon, so you're just going to wipe their whole board. This offers attack end of turn without suspending, which keeps your block available next turn. So if you Evo into this, wipe the board, you go to pass, you get to swing, and it does not suspend. You are now dealing damage while keeping your blocker up. You are definitely in the driver's seat after doing that. This is also searchable via trainings and memory boost. It is red and blue, so in the respective decks that you would play it in, you can find it, and you can actually add it to hand without bottom decking it. That's huge. This does not threaten lethal from one security. The enemy definitely has to be at 0 for you to take a game off OmniX. If it did trash a security in some way or unsuspend, this would be higher on my list, but it doesn't, so it's down here at the moment. But playing this card will almost definitely put you in control of the game and allow you to be in a position where you are more than ready to just win the game on your next turn, more than likely. Number 4, I have Jesmon GX Ace. This card is actually a lot better than I think it reads. it's a 6-cost Evo, which is expensive, but it is a potential protoform target. That is a 5-cost Evo with the protoform. And if you have a memory setter and a training setup, like, you can get into this and keep your turn. It's not impossible. The Blast Evo is not DNA dependent, so unlike some of our other level 7 or Blast Ace DNAs, you don't need 2 level 6s in order to ace into this. You can still DNA with it, but you can just generically Blast Ace on this on a level 6 black or red, which is really nice. The downside, you do need Royal Knights as your level 6s to get your bang for your buck out of this card. So you're going to want to tuck the Royal Knight trait cards from hand or trash in order to pop things and get your funny unsuspend effect. So that's really important for this. You can tuck a Royal Knight on each attack to continue popping single targets. That's really powerful in its own right. So if you're playing this in a deck that likes this card, you're going to be removing a lot of bodies. And the 16k deletion threshold is really good. If you have no DP boost, that's what this Digimon's DP will sit at, and you're popping targets with less DP than it. You are more than likely to trash one, check one, and then check again, which threatens game from 2 security. We're starting to get into the threshold where 2 security is no longer safe, which I think just makes this, as far as ending the game from a high security standpoint, this is a really good card for that in the specific decks where it thrives. So that's why it's stuck at number 4. Number 3, Imperial Paladin Mode Ace. Really, really great card. It is a 6-cost Evo, which is a little bit expensive. You really need to ace into this to ever swing with it unless the enemy has a level 7 in trash. If there's no level 7 in trash, you are not just hard Evoing into this and then swinging unless something has gone terribly wrong for your opponent and they've given you 6 memory. This also trashes all sources on enemy Digimon, which I think is maybe understated for some people. Your stacks are strong because of the inherits you put onto them a lot of the time, and you're just removing a ton of value from the opponent's board by stripping all of their sources. This also returns the trash to the bottom of the deck, which denies scrambles. That's really important in today's meta. Scrambles are huge, and you're just denying the opponent the opportunity to fix their top card and play a rookie out from trash. This also gets to swing once for every Digimon without sources that the opponent has. So if the opponent is really wide, this threatens game from a high security count if the opponent's overextended. So if they've gone 3 or 4 Digimon wide, you pop this down when they swing. Now next turn, you're threatening 3 or 4 checks plus the initial check that you get off of this. Like, you can close out the game really, really easily with this card. If this wasn't a 6-cost Evo, I think it'd be higher on my list. But in Imperial decks, I feel like this is just, I mean, this is the boss card, right? This is a really great card. And if you have ways to get into this and keep turn, it's a really great boss card. Number 2, Gallantmon Crimson Mode Ace. This is a 5-cost Evo on a level 6. But the cost really doesn't matter if you run EX2 Tocado. I think if we're going to gauge the effectiveness of some of the other finishers here with their dependence on X-antibody or Protoform, I think it's also fair to give Gallantmon Crimson Mode Ace the benefit of EX2 Tocado. If you can have the the Blitz Tamer on the board, you're threatening this card in a really, really kind of crazy way. The 15k deletion on any number of targets is really strong, just generically on a red level 7. And it usually trashes 2 security and then checks 1, which can threaten the game from 2 security really easily. The highlight of this card is that not only cares about your trash, but the opponent's trash as well, which means that threshold for trashing security is going to get up really fast. And I think a lot of the time people aren't prepared for this card just come out and trash 1, 2, or 3 security and then win you the game. Which ties into the last point. This becomes a bigger and bigger threat the longer the game goes due to uncapped security trashing. This is just going to be a menace. The longer the game goes and the more opportunity you have to plop this down and swing out at the opponent, just the worse it is for them. So that's why this is number 2 on the list. And I feel like it would be really easy to put this at number 1. And my number 1 may be controversial, which is the fun of doing this. Gallantmon X-antibody. This card is silly. And I'm going to stand by this decision. This is totally playable in all 3 colors. It does require X-antibody, but I think it's totally reasonable to protoform into this in any of the 3 colors that this is playable in without running Gallantmon Tribal. It has built-in protection as long as you have 0 or less memory, so if the opponent is working with any memory, this card is safe on board. This can get up to 20k, making the clapback to swing over it really hard. That DP boost lasts until the end of your opponent's turn. They're not going to swing over a 20k body unless something has gone horribly wrong. This deletes single targets really easily. You can dole out all those DP reduction effects and then the 10k deletion threshold on the same target, which means big targets, easy to deal with. In the same vein as that, the DP reduction and deletion effect being separate makes removal very versatile. You can target 2 small 4k bodies and a 10k for deletion. You can target an 8k and give it both minus 4k triggers and then delete a 10k. Or you could take out a single 18k or lower. There's just lots of ways you can combine the effects in order to trim the opponent's board down without being like rigidly stuck to delete one of your opponent's Digimon with the highest DP. And this also threatens the game from 2 security via 1 check, trashing 1, and then 1 check. I think it would be easy to argue that this is worse than Crimson Mode Ace for some people. But Crimson Mode Ace is really runnable in one color. This is able to be run in three. A lot of the times Crimson Mode Ace is going to be trashing two, checking one. This is also going to be threatening game from the same security standpoint pretty frequently. And then this has protection, Crimson Mode Ace doesn't. I think you could go either way with the two, but I feel like this card is kind of not thought about in other colors, and it should be, because it's not just exclusive to being a Gallantmon finisher. You can run this in any of these three colors, and it would be really strong. So that's my top 10. I do also want to throw up, this was the card pool. You can't see what's covered underneath my head. It is the Zafaga Ace and the Mervamon. These were all the cards I was thinking about. I don't want you guys to feel like I snubbed any of your favorite cards. This is everything I was thinking of, everything I was talking to people about as the best finishers in the game. For one reason or another, if a card in this list was not in my top 10, there's a reason for it. You can comment down below asking, and I can explain my train of thought. But I tried to be consistent with trashing security being a priority. The more utility it offered, the better it was. The higher threshold for winning the game, the better a finisher was. You kind of get the idea. But that's going to be it for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What is your number one finisher in this game? What would you say is the best card for closing out the game generically across lots of decks? So thank you guys for watching. Have a great day. Thank you to our YouTube members for supporting this channel. It's people like Langlong, Big Z11, Coffee Deus, and Octavian who make videos like this possible.